Here are the top stories for today, February 25, 2021. A gesture of gratitude, Malacanang says President Rodrigo Duterte wants to witness the arrival of Sinovac vaccines in the country. The PCOO lauds Justice Department's review panel affirming the government's efforts in addressing concerns over the anti-drug campaign. No stones unturned, the National Bureau of Investigation will conduct its own probe on the shooting incident between police and anti-narcotics agents in Quezon City. And the country marks the 35th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. President Rodrigo Duterte wants to witness the arrival of Sinovac vaccines donated by the Chinese government to the Philippines.
Wala naman pong epekto yan sa ibang mga issue na meron tayo sa ating bilateral relations sa China. Nagpapasalamat lang po ang Presidente dahil sa panahon ng pagsubok, China na naman ang nag-deliver. Nung panahon po kasi ng Maguindanao, nung Marawi, China rin po ang nagbigay ng mga baril na kinakailangan niya. Nung mga pagkakataon na pinagkait siya ng mga Amerikano ng baril. No? So sa pangalawang pagkakataon, nung nangangailangan tayo ng bakuna, ang unang nagbigay po sa atin, China.
In a palace briefing today, spokesperson Harry Roque said China's Sinovac vaccines will arrive on Sunday, February 28.
Tatlong tulog na lang po, parating na po ang bakuna. Inaasahan na darating sa araw ng linggo. Itong linggong po ito ang Sinovac. Kaya po excited na tayong lahat. Inaasahan po at least ang pinaplano natin ay sasalubungin po ng mga opisyal ang pagdating ng mga bakuna.
Meanwhile, the government is expected to come up with some changes on the inoculation priority list after the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, discouraged the use of Sinovac for healthcare workers and the elderly. Roque earlier said that Sinovac only has 51% efficacy rate based on the clinical trial made to healthcare workers in Brazil. He said only Sinovac conducted the said trial and that studies made among ordinary people shows it has 91% efficacy rate. Malacanang maintains President Rodrigo Duterte has no direct negotiation with Sinopharm. This despite the claim of Mon Tulfo as published in his February 20 column in Manila Times. Tulfo, who sits as a special envoy to China, said he had lent his phone to Duterte and let the chief executive talk to the Sinopharm representative in the country. He said the president himself had requested samples of COVID-19 vaccine jabs for him and his family. Tulfo also admitted that he, along with unnamed government officials, received the unauthorized COVID-19 vaccine from Sinopharm in October last year and informed Duterte in December that the vaccine has no troublesome side effects. Roque clarified that only members of the Presidential Security Group are allowed to obtain the China-made vaccine after the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, granted them a compassionate license for its use. FDA Director General Eric Domingo said Tulfo's case will be referred to the agency's Regulatory Enforcement Unit for investigation. The Health Department is going after individuals who undergo unauthorized vaccination of COVID-19. This as newspaper columnist and special envoy to China Ramon Tulfo admitted he was inoculated with an unregistered COVID-19 vaccine from China's Sinopharm.
Katulad niyan, may lumalabas pa rin na ibang tao na umaamin na nabakunahan sila. Ito po ay makakasama sa investigasyon. And all of these things, kapag nakita natin na hindi ayon sa mga batas na meron tayo dito sa ating bansa, will be considered illegal. So kung sino man po yung mga kababayan natin o di kaya ay mga distributors or suppliers na nagbibigay nito mga bakunang wala pa hong emergency use authority, ay magkakaroon ng appropriate investigation, and if there would be violations, magkakasanction po. So titignan po natin ito, no? But definitely, kung meron hong supplier na ganyan, they have to apply for their EUA.
President Rodrigo Duterte ordered the local government units to provide free face masks to their constituents. Duterte's directive came amid the pending arrival of COVID-19 vaccines in the country. The use of a face mask is one of the government's health protocols that Filipinos need to follow amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
The provincial government and the municipal governments and the city governments, I require you to buy and give it for free. Kung ayaw ninyong gawin yan, ako ang magdala ng bakuna doon sa lugar ninyo. I will go to the city hall at ibigay ko yung, ayan, ayaw mo magbili, ako ang mag-deliver. Ibigay mo sa mga tao. Ayaw mong gumastos, ako ang gagastos.
The president also reminded the people to use the mask properly.
Huwag naman yung gamitin ninyo, kita ko daan yung ninyo, nagsasalita ganun. Wala na. Inhale. Papasok sa hinga mo yung iba naman ganun na. Ay, buhay.
The Department of Education, or DepEd, says it will follow the decision of President Rodrigo Duterte on extending the deferment of pilot in-person classes implementation. The president earlier rejected the proposed trials of physical classes in certain areas to avoid risking the lives of learners and teachers. In a statement, DepEd says it understands that the availability and rollout of vaccines in the country are critical factors for this undertaking. In the meantime, the department shall continue preparing action plans for this activity should the president give his approval in the coming months. To date, about 1,904 public schools nationwide have already been identified as possible participants for the pilot study of limited face-to-face classes. Local governments in the metro impose some measures to intensify its efforts against COVID-19. The details from Marita Mawahe.
In Marikina City, Mayor Marcelino Teodoro assures that health protocols will be strictly implemented ahead of the arrival of the COVID-19 vaccines in the country. Teodoro says Marikina City is also continuing its contact tracing and educating the public about the dreaded disease. Marikina City recently opened their mega vaccination facility that can inoculate 10,000 people per day. Teodoro said their cold chain facilities where the vaccines will be stored are within the same radius of 100 meters, so transportation of the vaccine and its storage will not be a problem. In Pasay City, the number of barangays placed under localized enhanced community quarantine has reached 55 due to the continuous surge of COVID-19 cases. The local government has ramped up its contact tracing efforts to contain the further spread of the dreaded virus among residents residing on the following high-risk communities. Pasay City Mayor Emmy Calixto Rubiano said the city government has intensified its efforts to curb the COVID-19 cases in Pasay City and has already requested the IATF for additional nurses and contact tracers. The city also continues its mass testing efforts even during holidays and weekends. Residents affected by the localized enhanced community quarantine are provided with food supplies weekly, while the COVID-19 patients are isolated from the communities. Meanwhile, Navotas City is closing its Centennial Park, which is said to become crowded by people who hang out or do their exercise routine. Mayor Toby Chanco said people often forgot to observe social distancing and usually flocked together in the area. He ordered the temporary closure of the park to avoid the dreaded spike on the number of COVID-19 cases in the city. Tiangco also placed the Navotas City Hall under lockdown since last night until February 28 after 24 of its employees tested positive for COVID-19. As such, Tiangco has asked the City Council to extend the deadlines for tax payments and other arrears from February 28 to March 5, 2021. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muaje.
Still to come, the PCOO welcomes the DOJ panel's affirmation of the government's efforts to address drug war concerns. And the NBI and the CIDG will look into the shooting incident between police and PDEA operatives in Quezon City. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Pangalagaan ang sarili laban sa Coronavirus Disease 2019. Hanggat maaari, umiwas sa mataong lugar. Iwasang hawakan ang ilong at bibig, maging malinis sa katawan at ugaliin ang wastong paghuhugas ng kamay. Takpan ang ilong at bibig kung uubo o babahing. Umiwas sa mga taong nagpapakita ng sintomas ng coronavirus disease gaya ng lagnat, ubo at sipon. Magsuot ng face mask kung kinakailangan. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
The Presidential Communications Operations Office, or PCOO, lauded the Drug War Review Panel of the Department of Justice for affirming the effort of the government in addressing the deaths following the police drug war operation. The Drug War Review Panel was created last year to reinvestigate the 5,655 deaths in police drug war operations. PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar acknowledged the steady work of the Department of Justice over the past months to review case files despite the pandemic and typhoons. He also expressed gratitude to well-performing law enforcement officers for their dedication to police service. Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara, who attended the online session of the Human Rights Council, cited the sustained efforts of the Philippine government to further promote and protect the human rights, security, and well-being of Filipinos. During his speech, Guevara said the Philippines' legal and judicial system and domestic accountability mechanisms are functioning as they should. He also said that the United Nations in the Philippines has held a series of consultations with government actors, the Commission on Human Rights, and civil society. As the fate of the Visiting Forces Agreement hangs, President Rodrigo Duterte now wants to hear what the public has to say on the issue. In a public address last night, he said the public can give their opinions through the Citizens Complaint Hotline 8888 regarding the issue. Duterte earlier said Washington, D.C. must pay if it wants the VFA to continue, which drew mixed reactions. He said lawmakers can also voice out their thoughts on whether to retain or terminate the deal. Duterte scrapped the VFA in February last year, but this was already suspended twice. Signed in 1998, the VFA allows the free entry of American forces to join military drills in the Philippines. Erring government officials may have been dismissed from the service, but this does not mean they have learned their lesson. This is why President Rodrigo Duterte wants them monitored, as he suspects these officials continue with their illegal activities. The president ordered the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, or PDEA, to keep an eye on dismissed officials, particularly those from law enforcement agencies. Duterte also warned police officers that they will be fired if they commit crimes, especially those who jail or kill innocent people and claim that they are drug suspects. He then read a list of PDEA personnel who were dismissed from the service. President Rodrigo Duterte calls on Filipinos to draw inspiration from the courage of those who fought for the freedom they are enjoying today. This as the country commemorates the 35th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution today. In his message, Duterte urged Filipinos to protect democratic institutions, preserve values, and uphold their rights as citizens. He also hopes that the people will unite and work together in building a legacy for the future generations of Filipinos. Meanwhile, former President Fidel Ramos, who is among key players of the bloodless revolution, urged the people to keep the flame of nationalism alive. Earlier today, Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte and officials from the National Historical Commission of the Philippines and the EDSA People Power Commission led the flag-raising and wreath-laying rites at the People Power Monument. This year's commemoration carries the theme EDSA 2021, Kapayapaan, Paghilom at Pagbangon. The National Bureau of Investigation, or NBI, is set to investigate the alleged misencounter that led to a shootout between agents of the Philippine National Police and the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency in Quezon City. This as the two agencies prepare a joint probe on the incident. Janice Cabe reports.
Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara has ordered the National Bureau of Investigation to conduct a parallel investigation on the alleged misencounter between anti-illegal drug operatives in Quezon City late Wednesday afternoon. Guevara said this is separate and distinct from the joint PNP-PDEA probe earlier announced by Philippine National Police Chief DepEd. For his part, Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency spokesperson Director Derek Carrion said they learned that the agency's Special Enforcement Service was conducting a legitimate anti-drug operation in the area. Based on sketchy reports, Quezon City Police were conducting a drug buy-bust operation when they found out that they were transacting with PDEA agents. At least 2 policemen were killed in the resulting shootout, while at least 3 from the PDEA group were brought to the hospital. In a statement from the PNP, SINAS tasked the Criminal Investigation and Detection Group to probe the shooting incident between PNP and PDEA agents outside the Ever Gotesco Mall in Commonwealth Avenue. Meantime, the PNP and PDEA maintained that the incident will not affect their relationship and cooperation in the fight against illegal drugs. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
Healthcare workers are not products that can be given in exchange for more COVID-19 vaccines. The Labor Department made this remark amid talks between the Philippines, the United Kingdom, and Germany on hiking the cap on the deployment of healthcare workers. DOLA Information and Publication Service Director Rolly Francia says the remarks of International Labor Affairs Bureau head Alice Visperas, saying Secretary Silvestre Bello III is open to lift the limit on the deployment of health workers in exchange for COVID-19 vaccines, was misinterpreted. The United Kingdom says it will not agree to a vaccine deal with the Philippines which involves recruitment of nurses, but said it is open to share excess vaccines from the World Health Organization's COVAX facility. The government only allows a maximum of 5,000 health workers to be deployed abroad in 1 year as part of efforts to respond to the pandemic. The Department of Trade and Industry once again assured support to local cooperatives amid the COVID-19 pandemic. This as the agency continues to aid agricultural, micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MSMEs, weather the impact of the health crisis. DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez said the agency has rolled out many programs such as the COVID-19 Assistance to Restart Enterprises or CARES program, Livelihood Seeding Program, Negosyo Serbisyo sa Barangay and Shared Services Facilities Program, among others. Under these programs, small businesses are given zero-interest loans, business advisory assistance, and essential equipment through collaboration with cooperatives. Lopez added that the Board of Investments has included agribusiness in the 2020 Investment Priorities Plan to attract more agribusiness projects. Up next, the parents and rescuers of the indigenous people's children in Cebu take a swipe at a non-government organization's claim on the issue. And Filipinos in Myanmar are warned to take caution in the wake of continued unrest in the country. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Alamin ang mga dapat gawin sa lugar ng trabaho laban sa Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ang mga kumpanya ay dapat magbigay ng face mask sa kanilang mga empleyado. Bukod dito, magbigay kaalaman din patungkol sa COVID-19. Siguraduhin malinis ang kapaligiran. Maglagay ng sabon at hand sanitizer sa mga palikuran. Siguraduhin ligtas at nalutong maigi ang mga pagkain sa kantina. Obserbahan ang kalusugan ng mga empleyado at katrabaho. Kung sakali man na mayroon silang sintomas ng coronavirus disease, gaya ng lagnat, ubot sipon at hirap sa paghinga, ay agad ipasuri sa doktor. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
The National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict has weakened the influence and control of the communist movement on IP communities. National Commission on Indigenous Peoples Legal Officer Dexter Precioso said the clout of the CPP-NPA has weakened since 2018 when President Duterte signed Executive Order 70 initiating the whole-of-government approach in addressing the communist insurgency. Before the whole-of-nation approach, IP communities did not know that the government is implementing programs such as free legal services from the Public Attorney's Office or PAO. In contrast, the IPs are now being armed with the knowledge that the government is doing its best to serve its people and the far-flung communities. The NCIP recently conducted a 14-day visit in various ancestral domains in Region 10 to meet with tribal leaders and obtain their inputs on prevailing issues affecting the tribes. Authorities responsible for the rescue of 19 Mindanaoan tribal children in Cebu City slammed a Cebu-based child rights group for allegedly twisting the truth of the parents' knowledge about the operation. In a press conference, the parents of the rescued children belied that the families were not informed about the February 15 operation. They debunked the claim of the Children's Legal Bureau, or CLB, that the group was asked to represent them on their behalf. They said they were not aware that the children had been taken from the UCCP Haran Center in Davao City by a leftist group to Cebu City. Police Regional Office 11 Director Fillmore Escobal also questioned the motive of the CLB for attempting to prevent the transport of the children by claiming concern from the parents. He said they discovered that CLB is connected to the National Union of People's Lawyers, a leftist group that has suspected ties to the communist rebel movement. Senior Deputy Majority Leader Jesus Crispin Remulla slammed the Makabayan bloc in the House of Representatives for always acting against the government. The 7th District Representative of Cavite said the Makabayan bloc always acts one-sided and constantly finds fault at the government. Remulla answered the privileged speech of one Pacman party list representative Mikey Romero, which slammed the February 15 rescue of 19 young IP children from the University of San Carlos Talamban campus in Cebu City. He asked Romero what he knew of the issue, including the age of the children, their parents' consent, and if those conducting classes have appropriate permits. He also showed concern whether the IP children are being taught by their so-called teachers to instinctively hate the police and the military. Remulla also said President Rodrigo Duterte is on the right track in creating the NTF-LCAC, adding that it will be good for all Filipinos if local armed conflicts are finally put to an end. The Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, on Wednesday advised Filipinos in Myanmar to get ready to evacuate as it raised Alert Level 2 in view of the developing situation in the country. The DFA said the alert level was hoisted as a precautionary measure to ensure the safety of the remaining 1,000-plus Filipinos there. Aside from evacuation, the DFA advised restriction of non-essential movements and avoiding places of protest. Only returning workers with existing contracts shall also be allowed to travel in Myanmar. The agency also reminded Filipinos in Myanmar to exercise due caution, monitor developments through reputable sources, avoid places of protest, and observe the guidance of the Philippine Embassy in Yangon. Last Saturday, reports said authorities opened fire at a crowd in Mandalay City after 1,000 government employees refused to return to work at a major jetty site. At least 3 people were reportedly killed. And here's the latest in our community billboard. The Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, will launch the Philippine Identification System PhilSys online nationwide on Friday, February 26. The PSA invites the public to watch the streaming of the event dubbed #ID Natin, prepare and cooperate with the innovative Philippines on its Facebook page at 1 p.m. The event aims to educate the public on the process of PhilSys registration and the benefits Filipinos and resident aliens could get with a single national ID. The Commission on Elections is also holding an information campaign on Friday to encourage everyone to register for the May 2022 national and local elections. The activity, entitled Waka Waka at Magparehistro Ka Voter Education Campaign, will be held in Manila and Quezon City. The motorcade will start in front of the Palacio del Gobernador in Intramuros, Manila at 6 a.m. COMELEC personnel led by Director James Jimenez along with several barangay officials will then walk towards the Gawad Kalinga village in Barangay Talipapa, Quezon City. They will hand out flyers and invite the public to register as voters and explain to them the protocols to ensure a safe and COVID-19 free voter registration. The nationwide voter registration will run until September 30, 2021. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. A gesture of gratitude, Malacanang says President Rodrigo Duterte wants to witness the arrival of Sinovac vaccines in the country. The PCOO lauds Justice Department's review panel affirming the government's efforts in addressing concerns over the anti-drug campaign. No stones unturned, the National Bureau of Investigation will conduct its own probe on the shooting incident between police and anti-narcotics agents in Quezon City. And the country marks the 35th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. Good day, I'm William Theo.